September 24th, 1863. A clear morning in New York Harbor. The harbor master spots something on the horizon. Ships, big ones, 6 of them. As they get closer, he sees the flags. His blood runs cold. Russian Imperial Navy. Within an hour, the entire city knows. People are flooding to the waterfront, thousands of them. Newspaper reporters are sprinting to their offices. Telegraph lines are buzzing. Russian warships in America, in the middle of a civil war. What the hell is happening? And the big question on everyone's mind, why is Russia here? Because what's about to happen will save the United States from total destruction, and almost nobody today knows this story. Let me take you back to 1861. The Civil War just started. North versus South, Union versus Confederacy. It's brutal, it's bloody, and here's what they don't tell you in history class. The Confederacy knew they couldn't win this war alone. Think about it. The North had more people, more factories, more railroads, more of everything. So the South had a different plan. They wanted to make this an international war. Their strategy was simple. Get Britain and France to join their side. If Europe helps us, we win. And honestly, it almost worked. Here's why Britain wanted to help the Confederacy. Cotton. Before the Civil War, Britain bought 80% of its cotton from the American South. That cotton kept British textile mills running. Those mills employed millions of British workers. When the war started, Lincoln's Navy blockaded southern ports. No ships in, no ships out. That meant no cotton going to Britain. British mills started shutting down. Workers lost their jobs. People were rioting in the streets of Manchester and Liverpool. The British government was under massive pressure. Their solution? Break the Union blockade, restart the cotton trade, which meant helping the Confederacy win. France had different reasons, but they were just as serious. Napoleon III was ruling France. He wanted to rebuild the French Empire, and he saw the Civil War as his opportunity. While America was distracted fighting itself, France invaded Mexico. They installed a puppet emperor there. It was a direct violation of American policy, but what could America do? They were too busy shooting each other. Napoleon figured if the South wins, America stays divided forever. A weak, divided America can't stop French expansion in the Americas. Perfect. So by 1862, both Britain and France are seriously planning to intervene in the Civil War. Let me show you how close this came to happening. The Confederacy was winning battles. They won at Fredericksburg. They fought the Union to a draw at Antietam. It looked like the South might actually pull this off. In London, the British Prime Minister and his cabinet held secret meetings. They discussed recognizing the Confederacy as an independent nation. In Paris, French diplomats traveled to Richmond to meet with Confederate leaders. They were making deals. The plan was coming together. Britain and France would announce they recognized Confederate independence. When Lincoln refused to accept it, they'd use force. The British Navy would smash the Union blockade. French troops would invade from Mexico. Game over. The Confederacy wins. The United States gets carved up. And then something happened that nobody expected. Russia made a move that changed everything. Meet Tsar Alexander II, the ruler of Russia. He's been watching this whole situation very carefully, and he's scared. Not of America, he's scared of Britain and France. Here's why. 10 years earlier, Russia fought a war called the Crimean War. Their enemies? Britain, France, and the Ottoman Empire. Russia lost that war badly. It was humiliating. And now Britain and France were Russia's biggest enemies. So when Alexander sees Britain and France about to intervene in America, he realizes something terrifying. If they win in America, they're coming for Russia next. Think about it from his perspective. Britain and France defeat the Union. Now they have the Confederate South as an ally. Their navies dominate the Atlantic. They're more powerful than ever. And then they turn their attention back to Europe, back to Russia. Russia would be facing them alone, and Russia already lost to them once. Alexander makes a decision, a risky, brilliant decision. He's going to help the Union. He's going to make it clear that if Britain and France intervene in America, they'll have to fight Russia too. It's a bluff, a massive bluff, because Russia's military is still recovering from the Crimean War. If Britain and France call this bluff, Russia might lose another war. But Alexander decides the risk is worth it. So in September 1863, he sends his navy to America. That's why those 6 Russian warships showed up in New York Harbor. Another 5 sailed into San Francisco Bay at the same time. It was unprecedented. 11 Russian warships in American ports, armed and ready for battle. The American public went crazy. Russian sailors were parading through the streets of New York. There were parties, celebrations, dinners with high society. Americans thought Russia was showing solidarity, supporting the Union cause, being a friend. But here's the secret that Americans didn't know. The Russian fleet wasn't there to help America. They were there to hide. Let me explain. Alexander's admirals had run the numbers. If Britain and France declared war on Russia again, the first thing they do is hunt down the Russian navy. The Russian Baltic fleet was trapped in the Baltic Sea, easy for Britain to blockade. The Russian Pacific fleet was vulnerable in its home ports. So the admirals came up with a plan. Send the fleet to neutral American ports. If war breaks out, the ships are already in position. They can raid British shipping. They can't be trapped. It was a contingency plan, but the Americans didn't need to know that. What mattered was the message it sent to Britain and France. Touch America, and you fight Russia too. In London, the British government got the message. The Foreign Secretary had been preparing papers to recognize the Confederacy. He stopped. The cabinet held emergency meetings. The Prime Minister wanted to call Russia's bluff, but his advisors talked him down. The risk was too high. Britain couldn't afford to fight the Union and Russia at the same time. The vote to recognize the Confederacy failed by 1 vote. France wouldn't act without Britain, so Napoleon backed down too. The moment of maximum danger had passed. Europe would not intervene in the Civil War. The Confederacy was on its own. And here's the crazy part. Confederate leaders had no idea how close they came to winning. If Russia hadn't sent that fleet, if Britain and France had intervened 6 months earlier, before Russia made her move, the South would have won. But Russia stopped it, not because they loved America or opposed slavery. They stopped it because they feared Britain and France. Sometimes you get saved for the wrong reasons, but you still get saved. Now here's where this story takes an interesting turn. The Civil War ends in 1865. The Union wins. The United States survives. 2 years later, in 1867, Russia comes to America with an offer. We want to sell you Alaska. The Americans were confused. Alaska? That frozen wasteland? Why would we want it? But Secretary of State William Seward understood what was really happening. This was payment. Russia had saved the Union during the war. Now they wanted something in return. Plus, Russia had another reason. They knew they couldn't defend Alaska. It was too far from Moscow, too exposed. If there was another war with Britain, the British would just take it. Better to sell it to America, keep it out of British hands, and make some money in the process. The price? $7.2 million. That's about $140 million in today's money. It's the greatest real estate deal in American history. Critics called it Seward's folly. They mocked the purchase. What's America gonna do with a giant ice cube? Turns out, a lot. Gold rushes, oil worth trillions, strategic military bases in World War II, critical position during the Cold War. The Alaska Purchase was the final payment for Russian support during the Civil War. Russia prevented World War II. America bought Alaska. Both countries got what they wanted. But this story has long-term consequences that most people don't realize. By supporting the Union, Russia made Britain angry for another generation. British-Russian rivalry intensified. They competed for control of Central Asia and the Middle East for the next 50 years. This rivalry eventually contributed to the alliance systems that triggered World War I. Britain allied with France and Russia against Germany. In a strange way, preventing World War II in the 1860s helped set up the actual World War I in 1914. History is weird like that. The relationship between America and Russia got complicated too. During the Civil War, Russians were heroes in American cities. Americans toasted the Tsar. The friendship seemed real.
But by the 1880s, things changed. Americans were horrified by how Russia treated Jews. Pogroms, discrimination, violence. Russian autocracy offended American democratic values. By 1917, when the Russian Revolution happened, any goodwill was long gone. America actually sent troops to Russia to fight against the communists during their civil war. And then came the Cold War. For 50 years, America and Russia were enemies. Nuclear weapons pointed at each other. Proxy wars around the world. It's hard to believe that once Russian warships were cheered in New York Harbor. So what happened to the key players in this story? Tsar Alexander II freed the Russian serfs in 1861. He modernized Russia. His decision to support the Union was one of his smartest strategic moves. But it wasn't enough for Russian radicals. In 1881, revolutionaries assassinated him with a bomb in St. Petersburg. Secretary of State William Seward was mocked for buying Alaska. Seward's folly, they called it. But history proved him right. Alaska became one of America's most valuable assets. Abraham Lincoln? There's evidence he understood what Russia was really doing. He knew the Russian fleet was there for its own strategic reasons, but he didn't care. The result was the same. Europe stayed out of the war. The Confederacy never knew how close they came to winning. If Britain and France had intervened just 6 months earlier, before Russia made its move, American history would be completely different. So, here's the ultimate irony. The Confederacy spent 4 years trying to get Europe involved. They sent diplomats everywhere. They withheld cotton to pressure Britain. They offered trade deals to France. And Europe almost bit. Britain and France came this close to intervention. But they were stopped by Russia, by another autocracy, by a czar who didn't care about slavery or freedom or American ideals. He cared about Russian power, about checking Britain and France. That's it. The Union was saved by cold, cynical geopolitics, not by morality, not by shared values, by one empire checking another empire. And that's how history usually works. Nations don't help other nations out of the goodness of their hearts. They help when their interests align. Russia's interest was stopping Britain and France from getting too powerful. America's interest was winning the Civil War. For a brief moment in 1863, those interests aligned, and it changed everything. Without Russia's intervention, there might not be a United States today. There would be a Union in the North, a Confederacy in the South, maybe more divisions over time. The whole map of North America would look different. World War I would have been different. World War II would have been different. The Cold War wouldn't have happened the way it did. Everything would have changed. So, why don't they teach this in school? Partly because it's complicated. It doesn't fit the simple narrative we like about the Civil War. We want the Civil War to be about moral clarity, North versus South, freedom versus slavery, good versus evil. And it was about those things, absolutely. But it was also about international power politics, about empires playing chess with nations, about strategic calculations. Russia didn't send its fleet because it opposed slavery. Russia still had serfs in 1863, basically slaves. They didn't send ships because they loved freedom. They sent ships because helping America hurt Britain and France. That's the whole reason. But sometimes cynical reasons produce good outcomes. The Union won. Slavery ended. The United States survived. Does it matter that Russia's motives were selfish? Maybe not. The result is what matters. Here's the final twist that makes this story haunting. In 1863, Russian sailors were heroes in New York streets. Americans cheered them. The alliance seemed unbreakable. 58 years later, in 1918, American soldiers were in Russia fighting against the Russians in their civil war. We tried to stop the communists. It failed, but it poisoned the relationship. 27 years after that, in 1945, We were allies again. We defeated Nazi Germany together. But as soon as Hitler was dead, the Cold War began. 37 years later, in 1962, we were on the brink of nuclear war. Russian missiles in Cuba aimed at American cities. American missiles in Turkey aimed at Russian cities. The relationship that began with Russian warships protecting New York ended with Russian missiles threatening to destroy it. Full circle. So, here's what you need to remember. In 1863, the American Civil War almost became the First World War. Britain and France were planning to intervene on the Confederate side. If they had, the United States would have been destroyed. Russia stopped them. They sent warships to American ports. The message was clear: intervene in America, fight Russia too. Britain and France backed down. The Confederacy lost. The Union survived. Slavery ended. 2 years later, Russia sold Alaska to America, payment for saving the Union. It was the greatest geopolitical chess move of the 1800s. It prevented one world war and set the stage for future ones. It saved the United States and created a relationship that swung between friendship and hatred for the next 150 years. And almost nobody knows about it, until now. If this changed how you see the Civil War, hit that like button. Subscribe, because next video we're covering the Confederate secret weapon that almost won them the war. Ironclad warships built in French shipyards that nearly broke the Union blockade. You won't believe how close it came. See you there.